Did you hear about the Morgans? Sarah Jessica Parker, Hugh Grant, and director Marc Lawrence.
Hello. I will ask the most important question first. Did you guys intentionally match your jackets? His and her outfits as a married couple?
I don't think your microphone works. Can anyone hear her? Can you hear Donna?
Can you hear me? Hello? Yeah, see? It works.
See, I can't. That's interesting.
Perhaps Meryl would like to address that question.
We don't even have to discuss it anymore.
It's telepathic
We are
at
so
this point?
psychically attuned. Just a nice, lucky coincidence. Yes.
What are we doing? We're matching? Yes, we are matching. We're a very touching couple in real life and in cinema. Yeah.
Mark, how did you know that these two would get along, would work together on screen as a couple? Did you know?
No, I didn't, and I'm still not completely convinced. How did I know? I knew from their first meeting in London. Not their first meeting, because they had worked together in another movie, yes, and which I didn't see. I've never seen, and maybe I should have watched before. But I hadn't seen that. But then they met in London, and it went very well. So I got a report about how well it went. That's when I knew there would be terrific chemistry.
Are there any details from this meeting that you care to share?
Yeah, somehow they both came up with a plan that they would meet, because everyone I was waiting in the studio was waiting to find out what would happen when these two huge movie stars sat down to eat dinner together. And so the report that we got back was that it had gone horribly. Hugh had sexually harassed SJ. It was really traumatizing, and it was something that they thought would be fun. I've never forgiven either of them and trusted them or really anyone else since that meeting.
Well, how did the two of you develop your rapport as a couple?
Can I just say?
Yes, you can.
We sent these emails to Mark, who I've known for many years, 3 films, and other people I've known for a very long time in Los Angeles, jokingly saying that I'd sexually assaulted her and made racist remarks and been very drunk. And they all completely believed it. Every word. And even when Mark called me and said, "I can't believe you did that," I said, "No, I didn't. Yeah, we've told you, it's a joke." He still didn't believe me. Doesn't believe me to this day.
So you've done 2 movies with a guy, and you I know this is the 3rd one, but at that point you'd worked with him twice, and you fully believed it.
I had very little trouble believing it. Yes, that was sad. I think about the two of us. Now, I was very protective of SJ, who I had just met, but I knew what he was capable of. So,
Hugh, you were very nice to me yesterday. I'm shocked.
I can do that, but I don't mean it. The whole lunchtime I was hating you. No, that's not true.
But how did the two of you build your rapport? Because you're very believable as this bickering on the outs married couple.
How did we? Well, we had 2 days of rehearsal in which to build a lifetime of rapport.
Yeah, well, you again have skipped over Extreme Measures, which was this thriller we did together. We made a film together 13 years ago, which Sarah Jessica claims to have forgotten about completely, which I find hurtful, because I produced it, and it meant a lot to me. It was my attempt to be something other than a romantic comedy person. It was a thriller, and 17 people worldwide saw it.
So, well, then a lot of our work was done.
Yeah. We bonded over fear, didn't we, at the beginning of the film? Yeah,
yes.
That was nice.
We were both very nervous and worried about being good, or that's what you told me. And I was charmed and comforted by your pathological...
Yeah. And fear manifested itself in different ways. You were actually green. I've never seen a green actress before. And my rogue armpit was schwitzing. I only sweat from one armpit, but it was out of control. Yeah.
And then it's a little bit like Stockholm syndrome. You know, they break you down. No, I don't know that we intentionally worked on anything. We had a really wonderful script with a great scenes, some nice, complicated subject matter to dance around, and I arrived very fond of Hugh's work, and wanted very much to be deserving of being there, and wanted to work hard, and it was very easy, frankly, to.
It was lovely. It was genuinely lovely, and so much so that we only wanted to be in 2 shots together all the time. We never wanted to be in close-ups. And we asked Mark to shoot us that way, and you never did.
There's a couple.
Very few. Very few. Yeah.
What surprised each of you about working with the other person that you didn't expect?
We include Mark in this?
Absolutely.
Should we go clockwise or?
Mark has no surprises left for me. I'm frankly bored of him. Sarah Jessica, she's full of surprises. She's tiny, but she eats more than any human being I've ever come across in my life. Literally anything. Put anything in front of her and it's gone within 3 seconds. Half woman, half locust. And also an extraordinary appetite for useless information. She'll say, so explain to me exactly how does the English golf handicap system differ from the American golf handicap system? And you say, you can't possibly be interested in that. She says, no, I am. So you tell her, and she's got it, memorizes the whole thing. She can regurgitate it just when you're least expecting it. That's my...
What about you, Mark?
I wish I'd asked that. I've been wanting to know.
Do you want to explain that to all of us now? What do I find? What was the question?
At this point, what surprised you about Hugh for your 3rd movie, and what surprised you about working with Sarah Jessica?
Let's see. With Hugh, I just never knew that I could love a man this deeply. That's really it. Each movie, it just grows deeper and more profound. With SJ, let's see. Well, this was the first time that we had worked together. So I find her rhythms very interesting. I don't know whether we ever discussed this. So she would do readings on lines that I would expect to hear a certain way, and then she had a completely different rhythm, which I liked better than what I had imagined. So I both went with that, and then in whatever rewrites we were doing, in my head, tried to sort of go that way. We've never discussed this, but I hope you find it charming.
Sorry.
So,
Very nice.
And what about you, Miss Parker?
Well, I hadn't worked with Mark. I had heard very glowing reports of Mark from some of my friends who had worked with him in New York on movies. And both Mark and Hugh sort of present themselves in advance of actual, real, intimate working conditions. And Mark pretends that he's sort of half involved, that he doesn't really know a lot. There's a sort of, I can't really explain it except that it's a very sort of humble approach. And he is very nice and he's incredibly kind, but he's very, very intuitive about what an actor needs. He's one of the most insightful directors I've worked with and gave me some of the best and most helpful notes. And it was only surprising because he basically said, I'm an idiot and I know nothing. And he is incredibly involved and opinionated and strong and has an enormous. He has a lot of tenacity, and he's really not the person that he is. He's lovely, but he's also a real leader in his own way, and I loved it and was happily surprised by it, and I loved working for him. And Hugh, similarly, well, misrepresents himself, that he will be sort of awful to be around all day, and that he's, grumpy and doesn't really love being an actor very much or making movies, and that he is difficult, and the list goes on. And he's really incredibly conscientious and really committed and works very, very hard on the script and takes rehearsal more seriously than most actors I've worked with, and would happily do take after take after take after take, and was always good, always completely invested, and always completely winning, and not at all the sort of cavalier, I have to show up, I'm grumpy, I'm awful. Tried to know everybody's name on the crew.
Yeah.
Treated people very well.
Yeah.
Punctual. And let me tell you,
That's rare.
that is rare for the men.
What do you think his appeal is to the ladies? Because the ladies love him some Hugh Grant.
God, I don't know. I've never thought of him as appealing. I'm trying to think. Ladies across the globe or American women?
American. We'll speak for New York women.
I think that everyone I have met or spoken to or know that adores Hugh Grant is because he is a thinking, he presents intellect and, his personal physical attributes that are just purely DNA that he can't claim any of. Just good luck. And
I feel this is excruciating. Honestly. Let's move on.
Moving on to the next one. Mark, you're a New Yorker. So are you. You are not, but that's okay. Can you talk a little bit about shooting in New York, at least for the first part of the film? You shot in my neighborhood, so.
Shooting in New York. I love shooting in New York. I hate leaving the city. I hate leaving my apartment. So it was
Is
great.
it true
to
that you
shoot.
wanted to, it's true you wanted to shoot Wyoming in Central Park?
I did investigate and see whether or not we could just use green screens and never have to leave. And for some reason, writing the script, it never occurred to me we'd actually have to go there. No one was more disappointed than I was. And the movie I did before this we shot in my building, largely. So I love shooting in New York, and I don't get lost, and I know my way around. I have doctors on virtually every corner. And it's the crews are great. But you do a couple movies here, most of the people in the crew. It feels like family. They're the best crews in the world. And also the other thing that's great about shooting a movie here is when you go to cast for a movie like this, even the smaller parts, the day players or people doing 2 days work, you get these incredible people coming in who are coming in off Broadway and just absolutely so sure of themselves and their craft, and it makes the movie better and go more quickly. It's just it's a thrill. So those are some of the reasons I love shooting here.
And for you, it's just a cab ride to the set, which I'm sure is a nice change from flying to LA.
Yeah, I haven't shot a movie anywhere else for a long time, so it's just such a privilege to shoot here, and it's different every time. It felt, being on the streets with this movie felt different than other movies I've shot here, and new neighborhoods I've not been to, and it's hard to shoot in New York for a lot of obvious reasons, which makes it just that much more special that you can actually get it done. And I love being here, and it's kind of a dream.
Your characters obviously go undercover in this and assume another identity. Both of you are incredibly famous people. If you could assume any identity for 24 hours, what would it be?
Well, I quite like to be a girl. But that's an English thing. We all like that. Quite pretty, quite dressed up.
Any specific girl or just a pretty dressed up girl?
I'd like to be called Wendy.
And you too, coincidentally, right? Want to be a girl called Wendy?
No. No. I always wish that I could have worked in the dugout of, like, Mets, the Yankees. You know, just as a ball boy. Just somebody worked in the dugout.
What would you do in the dugout? What do you mean?
I would fetch the bats for the players and make sure they had everything they needed, and the Gatorade tank was filled up, and they had the proper cloths, you know, to wipe...
Cloths?
Cloths, you know, to wipe their
He
hands
doesn't know
off.
anything about
You have
baseball,
nothing
so he
about
doesn't know.
baseball, do you?
Well, I did. I did a baseball scene in Mark's film with Bullock.
I'm sorry.
We went to the Mets.
Of course you
Sorry.
did.
That's right.
I know all about it now.
I'm going to tell everyone
What's
what you said
happened-
about
what-
Mo Vaughn.
Yeah, well, that very, very fat
Oh,
one. What's
Mo
happened
Vaughn.
to him? I love the way that some of the players were so fat they made the stadium shake when they ran round.
And before we turn this over to the audience to ask some questions, I wanted to ask both, actually all three of you, you've done a lot of great romantic comedies. There's so many made that don't work. What do you think makes one work? What have you learned?
I have two very interesting things to say about this. Because I get a lot of romantic comedy scripts. And the two things that are very rare and which you have to have, one is it's actually got to be funny. So with Mark, we got that rewritten. And the other is that when it comes to the love bit, the romance bit, it's got to be the real thing and not some synthetic version. I sometimes get scripts where you think, yeah, someone in Hollywood has sort of put the love in because the girls will like that. But with Mark and with Richard Curtis, who I did those films with, they both, you'd never believe it to look at Mark, but I think love actually is important to them and him. And I think that if it's authentic, if it's the real thing, the film has a sort of has a depth that otherwise they lack. And I think this film, you know, apart from just being funny, fish out of water comedy, is about it is about love. It's about whether love can survive marriage. It didn't in Mark's case, but no, that's not true. He's very, very happily married, and I think it's in a way it's a hymn to marriage, isn't it, Mark?
Yes, I would say so. Absolutely, a hymn to marriage and bears and bulls. Yes, yes. It's hard to do. I mean, good romantic comedies are. I think it's deceptive because I think people.
Louder.
It's deceptive. I think people, viewers, critics often look at romantic comedies as some secondary form. And if you look at the really, really good ones, I think they're the hardest things to do. And I think, as Hugh said, just by the definition of romantic comedy, it's very difficult to be truly romantic and funny in a movie, and there's 8 billion things that have to happen correctly to make a really, really good one. And you can do everything right and have the script right and have the right actors, and you still have to have a little bit of luck and lightning in a bottle or whatever they call it. But I think it's incredibly difficult, and there's really, there's a handful of truly great ones, including this. So.
And do you think you can fake chemistry, or do the actors have to have it?
I personally can fake chemistry, but I've been doing it for years with my wife. No, I don't think you can fake it. I think the camera's kind of right here, and the chemistry is so much. It's about looks and facial expressions. It's not it as much or sometimes even more than what's written on the page. And I don't think that there's a way that you can fake that. I think Hugh and SJ actually really liked each other. There certainly are legendary stories about great, great beloved romantic comedies where the two people in them would have willingly exchanged gunfire. So I don't think that they have to like each other necessarily, but I don't think that you can fake the chemistry.
Well, I'm sure you guys have some questions. Lady in the blue.
I have a lot of questions, but I wanted to ask you, Mark, taking the leap from being a writer to then also being a director, how difficult was that for you? And also, who were the filmmakers who really inspired you, before you started really with your career?
Okay, I heard the second part, which was filmmakers who really inspired me, and the first part was
Was going from a writer to a director.
Oh, going from a writer to a director. Going from a writer to director was easy. I had done a bunch of films which I'd written and produced before I started directing, and it's hard for writers on sets because you're watching and you see something you'd like to change or rewrite or discuss, and you're trying to, what's the exact perfect moment to talk to the director, and so now I really just get to have those discussions with myself, and if there's something I want to rewrite or change, I can go and do it. So for me, it's actually a lot easier. It was much more stressful being a writer on a set than it is writing and directing. And in terms of the people who inspired me, I mean, it's a long list, and I'm sure a list that's shared by a lot of people here, but for romantic comedies, just to name a few, obviously Billy Wilder. I don't think you can make a better movie than The Apartment. Of course, Woody Allen. I would say for most comedy writers of my generation, Annie Hall was sort of a Rosetta Stone, and a lot of the Jim Brooks movies are movies I love. Broadcast News is one of my favorite films of all time. So those are a few.
Hi. I just have a short question. I wanted to know, is there like a scene you really liked or like a scene you really enjoyed filming, like a funny one? Did you have a favorite one, or?
I didn't hear.
Oh, is there a scene that we particularly enjoyed filming?
Oh, no.
I like very much the scenes, the real scenes that are 2 and 3, sometimes 4 pages, where you can really talk to another person, preferably Hugh, for a while. And that sounds, I'm not explaining it well, but I like the scenes where you can really work and I don't know, act and talk about things that are more important to the story, the relationship. I prefer them to some of the smaller kind of quippy stuff. Sometimes is very hard, and there's too much. They're so precious, and sometimes you just, I can get more lost in a real scene that we can just do over and over again.
It's much easier when there's some momentum, isn't it? It's a bit more like the theatre. You get some pace going, and there's little scenes that are an eighth of a page, and you just got to walk on and say something funny and get off. They're a nightmare. It's too much pressure. Yeah, agree with that. But Mark, did we actually enjoy any moment of filming?
No, I'm trying to think of a scene also that it's much easier for me.
I liked so much doing all the Fallujah stuff, and I liked the vows, and I liked the jogging and the mouse scene, and I liked all the scenes
I like the scenes now, but at the time. Actually, we were in a good mood doing the mouse scene. I remember that. Yeah. That was nice.
That was nice. I remember the scenes that I didn't like shooting more,
yes.
Honestly. It's easier for me to remember the ones that were sort of torture.
Yeah.
I recall a couple.
Which were the toughest for you, Mark?
Well, it wasn't just about me. I mean, it is mostly about me. But it was me vicariously experiencing their pain, unhappiness, or thinly veiled hostility. What were some of the worst? I think the scenes are actually good in the film. The rain scenes were truly, I'd say, torturous. No?
It didn't bother me that
really?
much.
Okay, I'm wrong.
It didn't bother me at the time. It bothers me now.
Yeah.
There's a scene in the rain.
Well, it was wet and it was cold.
Right,
and it was
fake rain. But what I don't know how you achieved, now that I see the film completed, is that we walk along the street looking like a perfectly normal couple. We turn the corner, and the next time you see us, my head is twice the size of a normal head, and hers is half the size of a normal head. Suddenly, it's a pumpkin talking to a peanut.
It's a comedy, and we thought, it was a visual effects thing we could try to kind of spruce up the scene. But these guys were out there. We thought it would be warmer then. I can't remember when we shot it, but
March 16th?
March 16th. Wow. That's somebody's birthday. That's Gracie's birthday. So was it in March? I don't remember when. Yeah. So we thought it would be warmer, and then these guys had to walk on the street and had to be dressed as if it were spring. And when you make it rain through these contraptions that we have, these big towers, there's no way to warm up the water. So it was absolutely freezing and raining on these guys. And then it got worse because after you left, if you see the film, there's a guy who falls from a balcony. And this poor stunt guy, and he falls, and then he falls. After he falls, he's lying face down on the street. and we wanted to get a shot from above of him lying face down. So he had to lie there for 15, 20 minutes, and then he developed hypothermia. And it was you guys were gone by that point, but it felt so terrible. So that was one. And then the other one that I remember was something that I actually cut out of the film, which was your favorite, the chase scene on the fake...
the horse chase.
The horse contraption
car
fake
horse chase
thing, yeah. That was unhappy. These guys really can't wait to see the film now. I can just say it's fantastic.
Well, you know, the horse chase scene has been cut because Sarah Jessica and I weren't just medium bad; we were shocking in it. It's I'm sorry, because I think you're excellent in the film, but you're terrible in that scene. Not at acting, but at pretending you're on a horse. It's a
That's
fake.
acting.
It's a thing with a fake horse's head at the front, and then a kind of two saddles. And the trick in it, and it gets towed along by a truck. And the trick is to mime you're on a horse. And for someone from Greenwich Village and someone else from Hammersmith, it's a hard mime. And I overact really badly in these shots. I'm doing this massive acting. And then on the back, looking like she's having a cup of tea, not moving at all, Sarah Jessica Parker. And it was meant to be a climactic chase scene.
It's a rough scene when you have Hugh Grant and Sarah Jessica Parker in a scene, and the best thing in the scene is a fake horse head. Yeah.
But I think what's funny about it is the hopes were so high for that scene. It was going to be thrilling. That there was one point that you were thinking about opening the movie with that scene.
I tried. Yeah.
And then you saw the dailies. Like, perhaps it shouldn't even be in the movie.
Oh, Lordy.
This is a question for all three of you. You were talking before about the fun of shooting in New York. Can you share some of the more memorable experiences when you were shooting on location out of the city? And I guess sort of in the same vein of what you were just talking about, any particularly memorable bloopers that happened during some of these more elaborate setups?
Well, you may have heard that there was a bear.
Not in New York. Yeah.
I could barely bring myself to tell this story because it's been told so often. It's a bit like telling a story to a 5-year-old. But there's a scene with a bear, and we go jogging on our first day out in Wyoming, and on the way back, a bear looms out of the bushes and threatens me. And we used a real bear. We used an acting bear called Bart, who's done about 30 films. And they give you this lecture before it starts about how terrifying the bear is and how it wants to eat you, and you mustn't look it in the eye and all that kind of stuff. But it's just not true. Bart was a bigger prima donna than any actor or actress I've ever worked with in my life. Took about an hour to come out of his trailer, wanted to be brushed, wanted to be shampooed, and then when he came out, he had to have a lot of praise. I mean, really a lot. If he did anything right, the whole crew had to applaud, and he had to be given his special treat, which was 13 consecutive cans of iced tea, one after another, from his crazy trainer, who'd trained him for the last 15 years since he was a cub. And Bart had become, consequently, half human, and the trainer had become half bear. And it was hard to have faith in his security measures, especially as he kept yelling at his two sons, who were his assistants. Do you remember that? Big fights were happening all around us, and there was an 8-foot grizzly bear looming over me.
Yeah, no, it was the most dysfunctional family I'd ever seen. I mean, including Bart. It was.
Yeah.
And they did things like they set up these wires. When they first came out with the bear, everyone was terrified. They wanted me and Hugh to go down and meet Bart, and I stood behind him, and that they they bring Bart out, and then the whole crew, everybody's terrified. Most of the crew's from New York. And it's a huge animal. So they come out to give us the safety speech, which is supposed to calm us down. And everything in the speech is that's ostensibly there to calm you down does nothing but terrify you. Because every piece of information was like, now Bart, he can feel your energy. He can feel your vibration. So if you're tense, that's going to make him tense. So you just have to project calm. So now everyone's completely, trying to project calm. So you can't look him in the eye. You don't want to look him in the eye. And no sudden movements, because if you move suddenly, that triggers his, eat a crew member response, whatever it was. So now everybody's trying to act calm, not look him in the eye, not move suddenly. You've never seen a group of people more terrified. Nobody knew what to do, just standing there. And then when he finally came out, we didn't realize how neurotic Bart was. That's the thing. Once that dawned on us, then we started to relax. Like he had things where, I don't know, we place his mark, the little X, actors, where they're supposed to go to. And I guess it was too close to the lights or something. He didn't like it. So he went over there and moved his mark back. Normally, if an actor did that, I'd argue with them. But he was kind of on his own doing that stuff. And it turned out he was just completely neurotic, and the trainers were neurotic with him. And then they were crying afterwards because they thought he hadn't. We may have shot the wrong thing. I think it was really, we should have gotten that family.
Right up here in the back, right in front of all of you.
Just a quick question. Would you like to attempt again something outside of proverbial comfort zone of romantic comedies, anything like drama or dark comedy? And it's more to Hugh and Sarah Jessica.
I'm never leaving my comfort zone. I'm very limited as an actor. Yeah. I wouldn't inflict it. I mean, I said earlier I did this thriller. No one liked it. No one found it thrilling. I will say two things. One is romantic comedies are not easy. They're very difficult, in my defense. And the other is that I certainly don't believe when people say, don't you ever want to do any serious acting, that serious is better. I think serious is just different. And if you had to choose which is harder, comedy is harder. Comedy is more challenging. Comedy should get the prizes before the deep, dark, serious stuff, in my opinion.
I just try to make the best decisions based on whatever is presented to me. I like very much romantic comedies. They're very hard to do well. They're easy to do badly, and it takes a lot of thought and effort to make it look effortless and to make people assume that it came easily. And so, I like to work with good, interesting people that I'm excited about.
I believe we have time for 2 more questions. I have one back here for you.
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I'm a huge fan of both of yours. You both have participated or starred in quite a few romantic comedies, and I was wondering in your spare time what romantic comedies you both like watching.
Romantic comedies I watch. Well, let me see. I do now watch Sex and the City quite a lot.
I do have to ask, are you making a cameo in the next movie, by chance?
No, not. I auditioned, but I failed.
Okay. All right, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. I had never really seen very much of it before. I'd seen glimpses, but I didn't like the look of it. I don't like when girls talk that kind of stuff amongst themselves. It's upsetting. But then in New Mexico, there was a hotel which had televisions, only about 4 channels, and one of them just showed wall-to-wall Sex and the City. So I got very into it then and became an addict. And I used to email Sarah Jessica, who was in the next door room, saying, I love your heels tonight. And, got worried about Mr. Big. I like it now. I like it, but I like it. I love the way it looks as well. I still don't like it when they talk about, stuff that boys should be talking about. I don't like it.
I completely understand.
Yeah.
The question:
What romantic comedies do you watch?
I love Albert Brooks movies. You mentioned Woody Allen, Preston Sturges. Love. The Way We Were, I think, should be viewed at least 2 to 3 times a year. It's a masterclass. I can never think of these things when I'm meant to. I'll email out my list to the iTunes store.
One more question back here.
Okay.
This is related to the previous questions. Among the romantic comedies that you did, which one is your favorite? Because personally, I love Sex and the City, of course, and for you, I love Love Actually.
The ones we've made, is that what the question? Which ones we like best? Oh gosh. Well, I liked this one best. I mean, yeah. I find it very difficult to watch the old ones when they come on the TV. Very difficult, very difficult. I like the films you and I have made together. Yeah.
Well, this is a great note to end things on. Thank you guys so much for coming, and thank you.
Thanks very much.